Hey YouTube folks, welcome to another video. And in today's video, we're going to watch a very interesting game here with an interesting story as well. This game that we're going to see today. It was played between Bob Fischer and William Edson. For those unaware, he's an American grandmaster. He was a multiple-time United States champion and a very prominent, strong player. And this game, besides being very beautiful, brings a very interesting story which was mentioned in the book Profile of a Prodigy, written by Frank Brand. And in this book, he says that in this game between Bob Fischer and William, at a certain moment when William made a particular move, Bob Fischer laughed. At that move, he smiled. So let's see what move that was, and let's also understand how this game went. Such an extraordinary game. And let's get to it now. So guys, here we are. And playing white was the American legend Robert James Fischer against William Edson. And of course, Bob Fischer. Here he plays his favorite move, e4. He starts the game with this move, and after d5, choosing to play here. Scandinavian defense, Grandmaster William now. The book says that Bob Fischer gives a big smile here when he sees the Scandinavian defense in front of him. So, does that mean Bob Fischer wasn't a big fan of the Scandinavian defense? He certainly considered it an inferior opening, but of course, that's Bob Fischer's opinion. The Scandinavian defense. It seems like a very calm defense to me, so this story became well known because of that smile against William's Scandinavian defense. And Bob Fischer. In this position, the main move is played. He takes the d5 pawn, after queen takes d5, then knight to c3. This is a very thematic move, gaining a tempo on the queen. And black has several ways to keep playing this position. Queen to a5 is the most played move here, but William, in this position, played queen to d8. Going back, as Armando would say. And now Bob Fischer continues his development. Let's see how Bob Fischer responds to an opening he thinks is inferior. In this position, he plays here. With d4 knight f6 was played, bishop c4 developing, and now bishop f5. An interesting move by black to quickly develop the bishop. But Fischer here, he goes straight for the weak point of this move, which is the b7 square, which becomes a bit vulnerable. It's not a major mistake, but Bobby Fischer plays right into this idea. Queen to f3 attacks both the bishop and b7 pawn. Black defends by playing queen to c8, covering both points. Pressure is now on the c2 square. Bob Fischer doesn't retreat but defends c2. He keeps developing his pieces, gambiting this little pawn. Bishop to g5 was played, then William played bishop takes c2. The game continues with rook to c1, forcing the bishop back to g6, then knight to e2. We can observe here a characteristic of gambits, like how Bob Fischer gambited the c2 pawn. Black has a development advantage here. The pieces are already almost all developed, getting ready to castle, while black still has many pieces on the first rank that still need to be developed, right? The game continues here with the move knight to bishop to d7. 7, then short castling by Fischer, followed by the move e6. And at this moment, Fischer makes a concession here. He gives up the pair of bishops, okay? In exchange for a very interesting idea, he plays bishop takes f6 here. Here, black captured with the pawn on g6. If they take with the knight, which is also a possibility, it can lead to a slightly more aggressive line for white. With d5, that would be a possibility, right? One possible move is exchanging the pawn on d5, followed by bishop takes d5. Notice that there's a really strong pressure now on the pawn at b7. One way to defend this is by playing c6, and of course, you can't take this bishop, right? Because the pawn is pinned here. Due to the rook on c1 after knight to f4, the threat of rook to e1 intensifies. Leaving the king in the center is already a major problem for black, okay? So William likely saw a line like this and avoided that variation. So here, in this position, he took with the g-pawn, which breaks the pawn structure a bit, but Tita keeps going, right, Fischer? At this moment, immediately he plays with d5, creating pressure. Here on e6, black doesn't allow this pressure to continue on the board. So they play with e5 bishop, b5 was played, pinning the knight on d7. And in this position, black has some problems here because white is threatening nothing less than queen takes f6, right? Playing on the theme of the pin and will win a pawn, threatening everything, so black, of course, defended against this idea. Playing the bishop to e7 protects the pawn. Bobby Fischer then moves the knight to g3, followed by a6. A logical move, right? Because the bishop is bothering here, the knight is pinned. Fischer has no interest in exchanging the bishop for the knight and moves the bishop back to d3. The game continues then with queen to d8. The black pieces here are going to try to find some plan, right? Another possibility that can be very dangerous in this position is to castle short. Okay, because the white pieces could play bishop to f5, which would pin the knight, right? From d7, maybe threatening to play queen to g4 as well, increasing this pressure, preparing an h4, h5. And of course, if black takes here on f5, it would be very complicated, very serious, because then knight takes on f5 would come. It attacks the bishop, and if it moves, there's mate with queen to g4, h8, or g7. Careful, this position isn't simple. Is Bob Fischer showing the Scandinavian can be troublesome? Let's see. William played queen to d8. In this position, Bob Fischer plays h4, aiming for h5 to pressure the bishop. But black stops this by playing h5. The game proceeds with bishop to f5, a key square, followed by knight to b6. William is now trying to put pressure on the d5 square. And Bob Fischer? He doesn't make the natural move here, which would be rook to d1. To defend the pawn, he plays dynamically, advancing his pieces with the knight from c4. And here he's sacrificing a pawn, the second pawn of the game. And William here, he took that pawn. He played knight takes, and now Bob Fischer. He made a little trick here against black's position because he plays in this position. With rook to d1 attacking the knight, then c6 to pin it, and knight to c3, notice Fischer's trick. He moved the knight to e4 to pin black, then brought it back to pressure d5. So here, the game is already starting to get very tense for black's position. Queen to b6 was played at this moment, and now Bobby Fischer found a very strong move. If you want to pause the video, guys, try to figure out what move this is. I hope you found this extraordinary move. I'm going to make the move now. I'm going to make the move. Bob Fischer in this position played rook takes d5, sacrificing the exchange, with a very direct attacking idea after black captures the rook. Here comes knight to d5, and this knight here isn't just a knight, it's a Pegasus. It's in the board's center, attacking the queen and threatening jumps on c7. In this position, black played queen takes b2, but if black tries to simply defend the position by playing, maybe with queen to d8. There are some very aggressive lines here for white. One of them would be to play here with bishop takes g6, and after f takes g6, knight to c7, a very annoying fork here. Notice that if black moves the king to f8, they lose the queen after knight to e6, a serious double check. Black has other options such as king to f7, but white still has a strong move. Queen to b3. And notice that the king doesn't have many escape squares. If the king moves to f8 or g7, knight to e6 attacks, and the queen is lost. So it's a tough position here, and another possible line would be to play with king to d7. But then, in this variation, you'll end up getting checkmated because you can continue here with queen to d5 and after king to c8. Knight captures on a6, revealing a rook check. I'll have to give up all the pieces. Bishop to c5, rook takes queen on c7, then checkmate with rook takes c7. So it's a dangerous line there if you move the queen back to d8 because you end up getting into a lot of tactical themes. William must have seen this in this position. He played queen takes b2 trying to challenge Bob Fischer, but Bob had already calculated everything. He played rook to b1 attack the queen. Queen took a2, then rook took b7. William Edson resigned the position. Bob Fischer managed to beat the Scandinavian, but why did he resign Rafael chess? You might be wondering, well, at this moment, white is creating two attacks here on the bishop on e7, and it's very complicated to hold this position. For example, if the bishop goes back here to f8, then the pawn on f6 is falling. And one of the ways for black to keep defending the pawn. Taking the bishop out would be to play with the bishop to d8. But here there's a very strong continuation. For white, what Williams certainly saw would be capturing the bishop on g6 pawn takes and knight to f6. Notice the king is very restricted. Moving him to f8 essentially concedes the game, putting the king directly in front of the queen. So he must capture here, and now white doesn't need to take the bishop right away. He can play an even stronger move here, which would be queen to c6 check, right? If the king moves to d8, it's checkmate with queen to d7. If he goes to f8, queen captures on f6. There will be an unavoidable mate here. King to e8 leads to mate with queen to e7. And king to g8 leads to mate with queen to g7. So yes, Bob Fischer defeated the Scandinavian. He proved here that they couldn't fight against him with the Scandinavian. So guys, this game here is very interesting. These attacking ideas against the Scandinavian, and also this story about Bob Fischer's smile. I hope you guys enjoyed this game. If you did, don't forget to hit the like button and see you in the next videos, guys. Thanks.